home. We are going to do great things in this province. We are going to make this a rich, fair, and green province. I'm honored to have you here today, and I can't wait for what the future brings and to working with you to make this the best possible province it can be. Thank you so much.
Well, good morning and bonjour. Merci à tous d'être ici avec nous ce matin. It's very humbling for me because I actually reached a magic age last month. 2 months ago, I turned 65. And as I reached out and talked to people about taking this step, I had two questions that I heard consistently from people. And the first one is, are you nuts? Why at 65 are you going to do this? At this point, you have children, you have grandchildren. Isn't it time to just take that easy route, that easy life? And you know, that's a real easy question to answer for me and for many others who are 65 and older. There is a strong core of individuals within our province who have contributed throughout their lives and want to continue to contribute. I've seen that over and over as I've happened to have the opportunity to speak in different parts of the province on different subjects. We must start to value and draw in and draw from the experience, the knowledge, and the passion that the seniors of this province have to continue to build the province and to help bring hope back to our province. But as many of you know, and those of you certainly who have run in political life, making that first step to run that first time, there really needs to be some specific reasons. Because a year ago, to be honest, I wasn't really thinking of doing this. I was thinking I would fulfill my commitment, which I'd made to United Way and previously to the homeless shelters, and I would take on some other challenges. But I really wasn't thinking of this. But a number of things have happened. I've had the good fortune to be able to work with all the parties in the province over the last few years, and Dominic referenced that. He had called me and in fact approached me to run in the last election, so did the Conservatives. And I had a chance to work on the social policies from various parties going into that last election. But I'd also had the real pleasure of working with Kelly Lamrock when he was Minister of Social Development in putting together the poverty reduction plan. Kelly got me very engaged in working on the homelessness strategy, the housing strategy, the core pieces, some of the core pieces of the poverty plan. So I worked across the spectrum. And when I made the decision that I was actually going to do this and that I was going to run and work with Dominic, it came about for a number of reasons. One of the most difficult conversations I had to have was one that I had about 4 weeks ago when I met with the Premier, because the Premier's a friend. The Premier had consulted me about policy. The Premier would encourage me to take on the role of co-chair of Crown Corporation, the Economic and Social Inclusion Corporation, which is set up to introduce and implement the poverty reduction plan. And I had to have a conversation with him out of respect, because he's a good man. And we sat down a few weeks ago and I said there's 3 specific reasons why I'm making this choice to not run for the Conservatives, but to fully immerse my political activity with the NDP. The first was that the Conservatives doubled the co-pay for seniors for the prescription drugs in November of 2011. I've written about it, I've spoken to the Premier previously. The math is crazy. On the surface, going to save $3 million, but on the other hand, we're going to have seniors who are going to end up in hospitals because they've mixed up medications, can't afford them, they're going to end up in nursing homes. I saw some of those experiences when I was at the shelters. 84-year-old man who ends up in a homeless shelter, then ends up in a hospital for months, got $1,000 a day, and then in a nursing home when he could have been living independently. The second one was when this province became one of only 2 provinces, to my knowledge, along with Alberta, which endorsed the federal crime bill. A crime bill is based on a Texas model, which Texans themselves are saying has failed and are changing. And we're going to invest billions of dollars more in implementing that model, and it's going to cost us tens of millions of dollars here in New Brunswick. But neither of those took me into the political activity. There was a third piece. And this is very difficult for me. It was very difficult for me to share with the Premier, but I was being open and honest with him. And that was around the Margaret Ann Blaney appointment. And I said to him, you know, Premier, oh, actually I didn't say Premier, I always call him David. He's a real good guy. I said, you know, David, I don't object to the fact that you appointed Margaret Ann, and I don't object to the fact that Margaret Ann accepted, because that's actually the system. I think that system's wrong, and I think that needs to change. And it is going to change because of the work that Dominic has done in presenting anti-patronage legislation, which everyone is now endorsing. It wasn't the actual act. It was at the end of the week when there was so much hubbub about it. I was sitting home, watching the TV, not far from it. You know how sometimes when you're watching TV, it looks like someone's looking you right in the eye? Well, the Deputy Premier, Paul Robichaud, was doing a media scrum, and there was a question. And that question was about that appointment. And Paul Robichaud looked me in the eye, he looked all New Brunswickers in the eye, and he said, oh no, we had planned to fill that role all along. It was just waiting for the right person to do it. And under my breath, I quietly said, shoot, or something close to shoot. And I don't usually use language, it's a little off. But my wife was there, and she kind of looked at me, kind of split. And I said, you know what, the Deputy Premier of the province just looked me in the eye, and he lied. And she said, what are you going to do about it? I said, I really don't know, I'm really not sure. But from there, in May, June last year, the journey began with the increasing conversations with Dominic to get engaged and say, you know what, there's too many things in this province that need work on. I can't stand by and not get engaged. And I want to get engaged with somebody and with a team that's going to bring a positive approach. That was the first question. I'll make the second question a little shorter that I get. I got the one, why are you doing it? So that gives you a little bit of an idea. But besides what I've already said, why the NDP? Because I've that question quite often, well, you ran homeless shelters, you ran not-for-profits, you've got to be you're probably an NDP lefty all along. I said, well, actually, no. I know it's going to seem like I'm just copying Kelly. Kelly's gone from the Liberals to the NDP, so I'm going to say I was a progressive conservative, I'm joining the NDP. I'm looking around the room, there's a couple of gray hairs here, would probably be as old as I am, or close to it. When most of you were not old enough to vote, and neither was I was actually on the front pages of the newspapers in St. John, New Brunswick as a young progressive conservative. And the news clippings actually still exist, where PC rose to landslide win. It was at St. John High School, a mock election in 1965 in conjunction with a federal election. In 1967, I've got a news clipping of me with Davy Fulton, for those old enough to remember. He was the Justice Minister with John Diefenbaker. And I supported Robert Stanfield at the National Convention in 1967 for his leadership. So I was as Tory as you could become. But I was what today we would have called a red Tory. And why was I a Tory? At the time, I'm sure I was thinking, I'm an independent thinker. As a young man, your views are your views. But my parents were conservatives. My grandfather was a conservative. Ultimately, that's why I was a conservative, a progressive conservative at that time. But you know, today, progressive conservatives don't really exist. On the national level, the National Party, and I'm going to give them credit, the National Conservative Party, I'm going to give them credit for a lot, but I'm going to give them credit for intellectual honesty. They've taken the word progressive off their names. And now they really, if you look deeper, are more like the Republicans in the US, or some of them are like the Tea Partiers in the US, for those of you who follow US politics. And here in this province, they haven't had quite that intellectual honesty to remove the progressive as well. But they're really out there. They support most of the things the National Conservatives are doing. So they've moved way out to the right. The Liberals have chased them out there. And what is now the middle ground is where the NDP is. And I think that's where most Canadians are. That's where I've always been, is in the middle. So this is my natural home to be here. There's an approach that's being taken that's pragmatic, that is positive, and promises some real change within the province. And that's what Dominic Carty has been doing over the last 2 to 3 years. And I'm going to close my remarks by quoting from today's Telegraph Journal, because if I hadn't thought this before, this really sums up why I'm doing this and why I'm going to join the team and ask New Brunswickers to join us in bringing hope, restoring hope to New Brunswick. Here's what the Telegraph Journal, of all places, had to say this morning in its lead editorial, is this: Dominic Carty's recent proposals have been informed, thoughtful, and balanced, qualities that are distinctly lacking in the government and opposition these days. We hope his constructive pragmatism carries the day. A province on the brink of a fiscal crisis, as this one is, needs leaders with clear ideas and a commitment to the public good that supersedes the quest for political advantage. Thank you, Dominic, for allowing me to join you. Thank you, Kelly, as well. We have a fantastic 15 months ahead, and I think we have an opportunity to bring real change to the province. Thank you very much.